Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR. I'm Blair Kirchhoff. It's Tuesday, January 20th, and we're talking college basketball with Star reporters and columnists. The mood of our local teams range from encouraging to bewildered, and you'll hear why from beat writers Shreyas Laddha, who covers Kansas, and Kellis Robinett, the Kansas State beat writer. Also, columnist Vahe Gregorian weighs in on the Missouri Tigers. We'll finish up with some thoughts about what's on my radar on the Kansas City sports scene. The Jayhawks are coming off their best week of the season, resounding home victories over Iowa State and Baylor to, at least temporarily, change the narrative on the season. Shreyas Laddha covers KU. Hello, Shreyas.
Hello.
So do you agree, best week of the season for KU?
Absolutely. I think they went into that week with a lot of questions. You know, they lost to a pretty middling West Virginia team on the road. The Darryn Peterson cramping situation loomed over. They were losing to bad teams, UCF, West Virginia. They were 1-2 in conference play to start. If they'd lost a third game going into the Iowa State game, they would have been 1-3 in conference play since 87-88. And the question was KU going to make the tournament with the way they're playing? Because they had 7 top 15 games going into this past Tuesday. And if you're losing to bad teams, there's always a question of, are you good enough to beat the good teams? And then they went into Tuesday, played probably their best game they played as a team overall against Iowa State that was undefeated up to that point. Iowa State obviously lost to Cincinnati a few days later, so rough week for them. But then KU followed up with the drubbing of Iowa State on Tuesday with a Friday drubbing of Baylor. Baylor obviously not quite as good, but, that's exactly what you need, right? Like, Kansas was underdog, I think, points-wise against Iowa State. They won. They had a 6.5-point spread against Baylor. They destroyed them. They covered the spread pretty easily in both games, obviously, with the wins. But it was a very impressive showing from Kansas. Their defense got back to what we'd seen in non-conference play. Darryn Peterson, even though he played limited minutes in both, looked really, really good. And the team around him finally looked like they figured out a little bit how to play alongside him.
That's a big key to this whole thing, isn't it? Being able to play with and without Darryn Peterson. Probably more important to learn how to play with him, since it appears he's getting, healthier, and we're going to see him on the floor at least a little bit more. But I thought, just my observations watching KU early was there's a lot of standing around waiting for Darryn Peterson to do his thing, which is a great thing. He's so good. I want to talk to you about that in a minute, but just Kansas learning to play with him. You've seen that, haven't you?
No, absolutely. I think, one of the things I saw in these two victories especially is it feels like they use Darryn off ball a little more. So instead of having him just bring it up and these guys standing around, maybe they have Melvin Council bring it up. And Darren's out there, running around the court, doing the things that you need Darryn Peterson to do to showcase that he can be that off ball player. Because I think he's such a talented shooter. They should use him off ball at times. Obviously, he's going to have the ball in his hands more than anybody on the team, as he should. But I think the team kind of flows a little better when there's Darryn playing off ball in some possessions, because it feels like they play more towards let's just let Darryn Peterson cook versus let's let the whole team cook. And yes, even these possessions where Darryn is off ball, a lot of times it ends up with Darryn taking a shot anyways. But the premise of the setup is it feels like they're a lot more active when he's not the one with the ball in his hands every time.
All right. So, Shreyas, what are we looking at here with Darryn Peterson? Christian Braun, star of the one of the stars on the national championship team of 2022, says best to wear a KU uniform in a tweet. Listen, this is a program that's produced the likes of Will Chamberlain and Paul Pierce and Danny Manning. They've had some pretty good ones over the years, but Darryn Peterson is absolutely an incredible player. It's a shame that we're not getting the full Darryn Peterson experience because of the injuries, but you've talked to experts about this guy's talent. What are we looking at with Darryn Peterson? How good is he?
I mean, the crazy part is he's played 9 collegiate basketball games in one of the most stacked NBA draft classes in a long time. And everyone I talk to still seems to have him number 1. And it feels like, reading between the lines, some of these guys tell me if Darryn Peterson decided tomorrow, I don't want to play college basketball anymore, there's still a very strong consideration for a lot of these guys to have him number one over AJ DeBonza, who's also super talented, and Cameron Boozer from Duke, who's very talented as well. He's averaging 22 points per game in 27 minutes. We haven't seen him break 32 minutes in any game he's played. In the last 2 games, he's actually started to play less minutes. I don't know if you've noticed that, but he played only 23 minutes against Baylor. And I think Bill said he was only really healthy for 19 of them, which to me is a little bit of concern. But when Christian Braun is saying he is the best, player to ever put it at Kansas City, I don't take that for granted. And for him to say it, Christian to say it, I think it's a big deal. For me, like looking at it holistically, talent-wise, I don't know if it's outside to say I think it's Wilt than it's Darryn Peterson. Like I don't think I'm there. I think makes the hard things look so easy. I think if we had a fully healthy game, like where they were just playing any Big 12 team, Darryn Peterson is liable to drop 40 on you. I think he would have dropped 40 against Baylor if they played him a full 30, 35 minutes, right? But he was really played 23 minutes, and I'd say he requested to come off at the 60-minute mark, as Bill Self said, in the second half. He came back in a little bit, but he was barely touching the ball when he got back in. But I haven't covered a player as talented as Darryn Peterson in my 5 seasons covering college ball between Kansas and UConn. And I've covered guys like Grady Dick, Stephen Castle, Donovan McClingan, a number of NBA guys, Johnny Furphy, who are good NBA players, guys who were picked high in the first round. But Darryn Peterson is just so special. And the crazy part to me is, I have a hard time trying to come up with a comparison, at least Jayhawk-wise, in how he plays. People say he looks a little bit like Brandon Rush in his like ability to make things look easy. I think my comp right now is like Jalen Wilson on like steroids times 3 or something like that. Like just the ability to get his shot off whenever he wants. You remember that Jalen Wilson game a few years ago against K-State? Darryn Peterson looks like that every single game, it feels like. And that's crazy.
You're right. I mean, he is he has the ability to take over games for, I think, pretty long stretches, but we just haven't seen a lot of those long stretches yet. But for the numbers, I think he's averaging 22 points. And in how many minutes? Is it
20? About 27 minutes a game.
27. Shooting 60% on twos, 41% on threes. He's 83% at the free throw line, none bigger than the 3 he made in the TCU game to send that game into overtime. That was clutch. And Kansas, of course, won that game. They absolutely had to win. They ended up winning in a big comeback fashion. I would say the best player that I covered in a Kansas uniform was Paul Pierce. Of course, he went on to an incredible NBA career mostly with the Celtics, and is in the Hall of Fame. So,
do you think he's better than Paul Pierce if you go back and remember or look at the tape?
Pierce had your Jalen Wilson, the K-State moment. I had Paul Pierce against Oklahoma. It was unbelievable. He was so good that Kelvin Sampson, then the Oklahoma coach, actually shook his hand when he came off the floor. So, I want to see more of Darryn. I really enjoy watching him. Can't wait for KU to play BYU. And you mentioned DeBanza. That'll be an incredible must watch college basketball game. So, but something else I wanted to talk to you about, in addition to Peterson playing more and playing well, Bill Self has shortened the rotation. And what impact has that had on KU?
Yeah, I think they've been a lot better with a shorter rotation. It clearly, Bill always shortens the rotation, but Bill shortening his rotation in early to mid-January is something new, I think. Usually it takes till February before he starts playing 7, 8 guys, but he's had 7 guys and he's tight with it. And it seems like it's played the effect that they need him to play, right? These 7 guys are giving them what they need on both ends of the court. I think they've kind of found a good flow with it. I think somebody after the game asked if Cole Rosario was out of the rotation, and Bill was very complimentary of Cole. I mean, this is a guy who came into the season, who basically was signed late by Kansas in the summer. He rose up recruiting rankings. The hype around him was really high when he was named a starter. He didn't quite figure it out. He's a freshman, young guy. He should be playing, senior year of high school ball, honestly, right now. and he's out of the rotation at the moment. And Bill was basically like, well, I mean, Cole was great. He's working his butt off. He's doing everything. But he's like, guys, we're winning games. It's hard for me to justify playing him when the guys that we have right now are working. And I'm kind of agree with that sentiment, right? Like, especially at a time where KU started off so shaky in conference play, you just need to win games. Like, we can figure out the rotation later, and clearly shortening the rotation is helping because they've had 2 really dominant wins against a really good Iowa State team and not as good Baylor team, but it's still a Big 12 team that's probably going to finish middle of the conference and maybe make a tournament run.
All right, so at Colorado on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Central Time, by the way, at Kansas State on Saturday. Great stuff, Shreyas. Thanks a lot. And after a break, Vahe Gregorian shares his thoughts on Mizzou. We're back on SportsBeat KC, talking college basketball, and turn our attention to Missouri with star columnist Vahe Gregorian. Hello, Vahe.
Blair, great to be with you, as ever.
Glad you're here. We're going to talk Mizzou. I know they're coming off a disappointing loss at LSU, but before that, a couple of great wins. They're 3-2 in league play going into this week's schedule, and it is a stark contrast to where we left them in non-conference play, the way that ended up for the Tigers. Now, they're looking maybe like an NCAA tournament team if they keep this up.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the problem with them is the pendulum keeps sort of swinging a little bit wildly back and forth. So we're not really quite sure where that's going to settle into the middle or, one way or the other. But when I saw that game in St. Louis, I
against Illinois.
Yeah, against Illinois, a 91-88 loss, the most lopsided loss in that rivalry, which goes back a ways.
Not 91-88, 91.
Oh, 91-48.
48.
I mean,
that's
43-point loss. Sorry. My math was a little bit off, but it was really jarring, and it came only, I think it was 3 games after they lost by 20 to KU. Weren't competitive with KU, a KU team that was still trying to find itself.
Right.
And it sent a shudder through you about the way this has gone for Dennis Gates. If you recall, he's had good year, bad year, basically, and where this goes now, we'll see. But I don't know if the right term is to Dennis Gates' credit or to his vision. It was quite interesting that night in St. Louis when he talked about how that game doesn't need to define their season and how he really looked forward to having his team healthy. And frankly, being there, hearing that, it rang hollow at the time because I don't think we really had a sense of what Jaden Stone could mean to this team and what Trent Pierce could mean to this team. And then a few weeks later, we see that was pretty significant. Those guys have returned. Basically, I don't have the numbers from the LSU game right in front of me, Blair, but they were averaging between them about 25 to 30 points a game in those games back. And they made the complexion of the team look totally different. And to the point you made about the games they'd won, I mean, beating number 22 Florida at home, but beating number 22 Florida, then winning at Kentucky for the first time in school history in pretty tough games.
Yep.
That just looks entirely different.
Well, and how about this stat? Since losing to Missouri, Florida has won 4 straight and looks like the best team in the SEC now, especially after winning at Vanderbilt on Saturday. Kentucky has won 3 straight. So apparently losing to Missouri has been the springboard that the Gators and Wildcats have needed to project their season.
But, I mean, you can look at that a couple ways, but I think the point you're making is that these teams have shown themselves to be maybe more than maybe we even thought at that point. And whether Missouri is going to get over these kind of meandering losses that they've had on the road in the SEC, that's the crux of the next question, I think.
Losing at Ole Miss and then at LSU this past weekend, the most recent one, that was a tough one. It seems like Missouri played from behind the entire game, cut it to, I believe, 4 late in the game. And I think you and I are both trying to figure out a backcourt violation call in that game that was pivotal for LSU's win.
Yeah, I wish I had looked specifically for this. I was thinking the call might merit a pool report from down in LSU, but to reset for the audience, I think it was 74-70 at that point, and Missouri had already gotten LSU in a 110-second turnover. And now this time they kind of snagged LSU up. LSU takes a timeout 3 seconds in, and then still has trouble getting the ball up court. And there is what is called an inadvertent whistle at 19 seconds, which is a second past when
the backcourt violation, right?
What I should know and feel a little embarrassed that I don't and have not successfully looked up is whether a timeout does reset that or not. But there seemed to be plenty of debate about whether that call made sense. And the fact it was an inadvertent whistle at that stage of the game is really
that's
discouraging.
Inexcusable to have an inadvertent whistle.
Yeah.
So, look, Missouri was down at the time. It would have given him possession, and who knows how the game would have unfolded from there. Kentucky had gone into LSU a few nights earlier and come from, I think it was 18 down in the second half and won on a buzzer beater. So LSU was a desperate team. They had not won a conference game until beating Missouri that night. You mentioned a moment ago getting Jaden Stone and Trent Pierce to getting them fully healthy really has changed things for the Tigers. Jaden Stone especially is such an impressive player.
He really is, and I hadn't really thought of this until, in fact, Dennis Gates said it last week. Jaden Stone and Trent Pierce had never played together before this last sequence. Jaden Stone's a grad student who just came in this year. And the 12 days in between the Illinois game and the Florida game really were a seismic shift for Missouri, I think. And, Dennis Gates made a point of thanking his team after the Florida game for him being the worst jerk in the world for that 12-day period. But it is interesting how a team can prosper through practice at this time of year. In that Illinois game that Missouri lost by 43, Illinois was coming off an 11-day break. And after the game, I remember, Illinois players and coaches talking about how they needed their vitamins from that. I thought that was a good way to put it. And I think there's something to that. You can sharpen the saw in ways that you can't if you're just bouncing from place to place every 3 days.
So Missouri has 2 home games this week, starting tonight against Georgia, nationally ranked Georgia, and then they play Oklahoma at home on Saturday. Couple of wins this week, and all of a sudden, Missouri is going to start looking pretty good in bracketology. They're already starting to creep up on. I noticed on Joe Lunardi's bracketology, they were among the first 4 out. And I saw another one. These, of course, are NCAA tournament bracket projections that had Missouri in. So, yes, they lost big to Illinois and to Kansas. They didn't have many impressive non-conference victories to build the resume, but the more Florida wins and the more Kentucky wins and the other teams that Missouri beats in the incredibly difficult SEC only is going to strengthen Missouri's case to be an NCAA tournament team. And that, that march of out and in for NCAA tournament play for Dennis Gates' team might be taking the right step this year. Do you feel good about where this team is and where it might be going?
I do, but I do think, we don't want to fluctuate with the wind every week here, but I do think defending home court this week is pretty vital, right? To feel like it's not just that they've reset, it's that they're now making progress, and it will look a whole lot different if they're 5-2 in the SEC after this week than if they're 4-3 or you hope not a losing record, because we know on the road in the SEC, no matter where you're playing, including at 0-4 LSU, is laden with pitfalls.
Yep, for sure. All right, Vahe, good stuff. Thanks a lot. And when we come back, we will turn to the sad trombone team among our locals, Kansas State.
Woof.
We're here with Kellis Robinett, who covers Kansas State for the Star and the Wichita Eagle. rough start to the season, Kellis, to the conference season for the Wildcats. They're coming off a 1-point loss at Oklahoma State on Saturday, an excruciating loss. The way it went down at the end. Let's review that quickly and then talk about what's wrong with the program overall. But K-State had a chance to win this thing on Saturday.
They did. Just fast forward to the final minute of the game. PJ Haggerty makes a clutch shot to put them up 2 points with 49 seconds to go. If they can get a stop, they probably win the game. And probably the most frustrating part about it for Kansas State is they didn't stop Oklahoma State once. They stopped them again, but they kept giving up offensive rebounds, let Oklahoma State tie it up, and then eventually they get the ball into the corner, and their worst defensive player goes over and fouls them shooting a three, makes all 3 shots, and then they respond with a PJ Haggerty shot from about midcourt on a somewhat humorous miscalculation from Jerome Tang. He said later he thought that all they really had to do on that play was inbound the ball and put up a shot and hope that Oklahoma State was going to foul quickly because they had fouls to give. He thought he might trick them into that. But Oklahoma State's coach said that's pretty much exactly what he thought they would do, and he told his players to back off. There's no way we're fouling that situation. So not the best coaching move there. Some painful defense, but that's kind of what to expect from a team that's 0-5 in conference play for the first time since 1997.
Wow. Was that Jim Woolridge team?
Tom Missouri. So Woolridge, for all his faults, always won at least 4 games in Big 12 play. He could avoid the extended losing streaks. Now the winning streaks evaded him, but he never really sunk to the bottom.
So you're right, 0-5. It's the only winless Big 12 team. Of course, they're 9-9 overall going into this week. Kellis, why hasn't it come together for the Wildcats? I wasn't. You were there. I wasn't there at T-Mobile Center in Kansas City back in December when Kansas State, or November, I guess, when Kansas State and Nebraska played a 1-point game, total toss-up game. Since then, Nebraska hasn't lost. They're having an incredible, maybe the best season in school history, and Kansas State was right there with them. But the Wildcats have not been good at all, really, in conference play. What are 2 or 3 things that are keeping the Wildcats from being better than this?
Well, that's the biggest enigma about all this from Kansas State. If they played like what we've seen, so pretty much the last 12 games, they've been statistically the worst team in the Big 12. They've only beaten 1 team who I would say has a pulse over that time, Creighton. Otherwise, their 3 wins were against Mississippi Valley State, South Dakota, and Louisiana Monroe. Everybody else has beaten them, including Bowling Green. So they've only beaten 1 team with a pulse. They've lost 1 game to a team without a pulse. Not great here. But their offense is ranked last in the Big 12. Their defense has been near the bottom of the Big 12. But like what I was getting to when I started the statement was the strange thing is, like, if that happened from game 1 until now, you would kind of understand it. They're just a bad team. But you're right. Those first 6 games of the season, they start 5-0. They're scoring almost 100 points a game. And not only do they take Nebraska to the final shot, they're in a position to win that game too. They forced the miss at the end when they're leading. And if Nebraska doesn't come up with an offensive rebound and make free throws at the end of that game, they win that game, and they're 6-0 before this. So they kind of tricked us all early. When they started 5-1, I thought this team legitimately had a chance to make the NCAA tournament. But since then, they've been the worst team in the Big 12. And the difference is that the offense has dried up. I'm not sure if Matthew Driscoll, their associate head coach, who Jerome Tang brought in from North Florida last season, I'm not sure if his offense just got figured out. The more people saw it on tape, and some, the opponents improved, they figured out how to defend it. That could certainly be part of it. Or maybe these guys just got off to a fast start and couldn't sustain it. But yeah, since then, the defense hasn't been good. The offense hasn't been good. They're not flirting with 100 points anymore. Now they're lucky to score like 85. And they assembled this team to win shootouts. And if you're not going to put up points, you can't win shootouts. So that's kind of where they are right now. And really, they've got players who are good at like 1 or 2 things. They don't have many all-around players. PJ Haggerty's probably the closest they have to it. He can score. He's solid on defense. But a lot of the other guys, you got guys who can shoot but can't play D. You got guys who can play defense but can't shoot. There's just always this constant, who do we have on the floor? How do we combine them? And when you have so many weaknesses, at any given time in the lineup, you just get a lot of losses.
So they're barreling toward a third straight season not in the NCAA tournament after making the Elite Eight in Jerome Tang's first season. Is Jerome Tang in trouble if they don't make the NCAA tournament this year?
Well, it's an interesting question. The results would say yes. The last time Kansas State missed the NCAA tournament 3 straight seasons, they parted ways with Bruce Weber, and we're happy to do so. The fans in the final year or two of his tenure were not happy, to say the least. So for kind of a foregone conclusion for him that after 3 straight misses of the NCAA tournament, he was out. It's a bit more complicated this time, mostly because Jerome Tang has a buyout that is flirting with $19 million. If they wanted to part ways with him right now, it would cost Kansas State $18.7 million, which, as you can imagine, nobody in Manhattan is eager to pay in the current landscape. If somebody has that much money, they would much rather go to building a football roster than paying somebody not to work here. So that, and just combined with the fact that you can rebuild teams so quickly now, there's always a chance that no matter how bad things get this season, they say it costs too much money. Let's just roll the dice and see what happens with one more time. That would be what saves him, that or a late season turnaround here. But the results over these last 12 games certainly have people jumping off the bandwagon. I've not seen fan apathy swoop in with K-State basketball like this since I've covered it. It's interest is going down, yes.
Well, they've got a chance this week with 2 home games, starting with Utah on Tuesday and KU on Saturday coming to Bramlage. We'll see what happens there. They've won 3 straight over the Jayhawks in Manhattan. And so Jerome Tang has gotten KU's number at Bramlage Coliseum. Okay, great conversation, Kellis. Thanks. I'll be back to tell you what's on my radar this week in Kansas City sports. Is Eric Bieniemy returning to Kansas City? The Chiefs have asked permission to interview Bieniemy, who'd been with the team for a decade starting in 2013, the final 5 seasons as offensive coordinator. He pursued new opportunities after that, landed with the Chicago Bears this season, and now could be headed back to KC to fill the role of the departing Matt Nagy. Nagy had taken over for Bieniemy, but he's now pursuing other jobs and could soon become the Tennessee Titans head coach. I expect movement this week on the FIFA World Cup base camp front. We know that Argentina and England have designs on training in Kansas City, but at least one other global power, Netherlands, has expressed interest in setting up camp here as well. We've already seen countries go outside the official FIFA brochure for their base camps. I wonder if Kansas City could wind up with 3 teams here, with another going to Lawrence. Stay tuned. Finally, Sporting Kansas City not only has a new coach and general manager, the franchise also has a new owner. Peter Maluk, the CEO of Creative Planning in Overland Park, has taken over controlling ownership of the Sporting KC franchise from the Illig family. The team's been valued at $700 million by Forbes. Maluk is a Kansas Citian, graduate of Rockhurst High and KU, where he completed law and MBA programs. Fascinating times in the soccer world. Okay, that'll do it for this week. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC production staff of Gabriella Lacey, Suzanne Hogan, Irvin Zhang, and Monty Davis, and to our editors Jeff Rosen and Scott Chasen. We'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City.